This podcast is supported by the original organic bedding and bath brand, Koyuchi.
Koyuchi has spent 35 years pioneering quality organic textiles, long before the word organic became, trendy. But words matter to Koyuchi. Words like craftsmanship, longevity, and wellness. So what does the word wellness mean to Koyuchi? It means that all of our products are absolutely free from harsh chemicals and dangerous toxins that can seep into your skin. It means effortless style that looks as good as it feels with naturally breathable, pre-washed organic cotton. And what does all of that mean to you? Well, it means that you can sleep well in Koyuchi's crisp, cool, luxuriously soft sheets that are ethically made and made with you in mind. Live well, sleep well with Koyuchi. And now during our Memorial Day sale event, you can enjoy 20% off organic cotton sheets, towels, and everything else at Koyuchi.com. That's Koyuchi.com for 20% off from now until May 25th. Koyuchi.com.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, and I am here today with our house DJ Tolliver. Hi, Tolliver.
Hey, Jeremy. How's it going, man?
It's going well, and I have a question for you, which is there a brand that you are very loyal to?
Yeah, that's a super easy one because I'm literally looking at my phone right now. Apple is a brand that I'm mega loyal to. I would do anything for them. I love you, Tim Cook.
Even though they make you change the chargers that you have to use like every 2 years and you have to buy a new device, that doesn't bother you?
Absolutely. I'm a glutton for punishment, you know?
Okay. Is there a brand that you don't like because of their values, their politics, something like that?
Yeah, just early on, it became locked into my mind that Nike was really bad because of their labor practices. So I don't mess with Nike anymore. I'm an Adidas guy. I'm a Doc Martens guy, but Nike, no.
Okay, well, that is good to know. And that is our question this hour to our listeners. Do your political and social beliefs play a role in the products you buy, the sports teams you root for, or the music you listen to? Or do you prefer to keep your politics out of your consumer choices? Let's meet our panel guest today. Joining me from Ann Arbor, Michigan is Micki Maynard. She is a business journalist and author covering a range of topics from transportation to food. And she is the author of a number of books, including Satisfaction Guaranteed: How Zingerman's Built a Corner Deli into a Global Food Community. Micki, it's great to have you here.
Jeremy, thanks so much for having me. It's just wonderful to know that the middle has gotten off the ground.
Yes, and you were there right at the beginning with praise and support for us as we were getting going. So we really appreciate it. Tell me, by the way, we just mentioned Zingerman's. That is an Ann Arbor staple for people who don't know. Does Zingerman's get very political?
Oh, Zingerman's is definitely an activist company. I would say they're more interested in social justice than anything else. They're very supportive of the African American community here in Washtenaw County. They are very supportive of the Pride community here. They do many, many things for charity. So yeah, I wouldn't say party politics, but definitely when it comes to social issues.
All right, well, Micki, we are also joined today by Nooshin Warren, who's a professor of marketing at the University of Arizona. She's in Tucson. Nooshin, welcome.
Hi, thank you for inviting me.
Well, and we invited you in part because we wanted to invite you, but also because everybody that we called about this topic said Nooshin Warren is the one. And that's because you did a big study on the impact of corporate activism. You use a phrase, boycott or boycott. Tell us what that means briefly.
As we're talking about activist firms or firms that get involved into politics or socio-political issues, which then will include social justice as well, we have a large group of consumers that might be agreeing with the firm on what that firm voices as their own value, and some that might be actually alienated by this. When these issues are very close to people's heart on both sides of political parties, then a group that is angry about it or do not agree with it might stop shopping from that firm. And that is what we know as boycott, and it's more familiar. But on the other side, there are people who try to overcompensate, shop more, and reward a firm that they believe is standing up for values very close to them.
Do you think that kind of thing is happening more now, Nooshin Warren, than it used to, that people are really focused on the values of the companies more than they used to be?
Absolutely. And there are several reasons for that. One would be change that has happened in people's social or political morality, what they call an issue that is not forgivable in their opinion. And then we have the issue of political power of firms, which increases daily by large firms that are now having global reach. And third, I think, is information accessibility. People now can have those political debates that used to just happen once a year on Thanksgiving tables are now happening on social media and with a large group of people. And also they can have easily more information at hand of what firms are doing, where they're donating, what is their actual internal practice.
Micki, Maynard, you've spent a career reporting on and writing about the auto industry. How have politics factored into people's decisions about the cars they buy historically and today?
Well, historically, I have to say I have a number of Jewish friends who've told me that their parents and grandparents will never buy German cars.
Right.
We certainly heard in Michigan many, many people saying we will never buy Japanese cars. And it wasn't even as much the World War II. It was that Japanese vehicles were taking market share away from the Detroit auto companies in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so that fueled some anti-Japanese sentiment. More recently, people got very upset when there was an Audi sudden acceleration issue, I think in the early 1980s. It really hurt their sales. And then more recently, there was the whole hidden diesel thing with Volkswagen. And then Toyota had its own little trip down the boycott lane when it was having trouble with stuck accelerator pedals. So you can go back and back and back in auto industry history, and kind of the moment that imported cars came to the United States, somebody was upset about them.
Nooshin Warren, how does the auto industry stack up in terms of the industries that have been affected by people's loyalty or disloyalty to certain brands?
It is absolutely affected, not just auto industry, but any large industries that are especially consumer market are always affected by people's approaches towards this firm. Nothing actually in that discussion has changed from long ago till now, other than what now counts for me as that behavior that I think it's unethical. It's something that is crossing my boundaries of morals, and will I then shop from them or not? When we think about the Jewish family that Micki knows that won't buy from German companies, that is a line that is crossed for them. But these days, what is happening is that there are lines and values that can get crossed that are related to politics, or there are social justice issues that can be regulated through politics. Very recently, we had the overturn of Roe v. Wade. That is something that the issue itself, pro-life or pro-choice, is not necessarily political. But when it gets regulated and can create what a large group of people count as injustice towards women's rights, then that becomes that line that when it's crossed, consumers can decide not to buy from a firm.
And before we get to the phones, let's listen to something from this year when brand identity and social issues really collided. You remember that Anheuser-Busch brought in a trans TikTok influencer named Dylan Mulvaney, who did an online ad for Bud Light, and the company got a ton of pushback and lost a lot of business. Here is the CEO of Anheuser-Busch, Brendan Whitworth, on CBS Mornings following widespread boycotts of Bud Light.
It's been a challenging few weeks, and I think the conversation surrounding Bud Light has moved away from beer, and the conversation has become divisive. And Bud Light really doesn't belong there. Bud Light should be all about bringing people together. And there's been impact on the business, and I think that's publicly covered on Bud Light specifically.
Now, I looked at the numbers, and after that whole Bud Light kerfuffle, the brand remains down around 30% in volume compared to last year. Nooshin Warren, that was a big one.
Yes, it was. And that's a very interesting case. Bud Light is not the first that people have been surprised by their efforts. And Bud Light's consumer base seemed to be more older generations, which were very upset and offended. So there was a boycott through older generation more loyal to this brand, which was predictable. The second thing that Bud Light did that was, in my opinion, very bad strategy was not standing by that action. So this happens, you already have lost a group of your customers on the more conservative side, and now you back out and put your CMO and basically leaders that were in charge of this action on leave, which makes that look very inauthentic to the other group of people that, to me, seemed from the beginning with this action that Bud Light was trying to recruit as consumers. Because if you look at the newer generation, they're more for craft beer, local brands. They're not Bud Light buyer per se. So it was a good strategy to kind of change the courses and values and bring in this new generations, while inevitably we will lose our older generation through time. But they did not do it well.
Let's go to a call. This is Rob, who's in Inver Grove, Minnesota. Hi, Rob.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well. So tell us how this works out in your mind. Do you care about a company's politics?
You know, it kind of depends on how much visibility they've had. And, you know, as far as the Bud Light case goes, I still drink Bud Light. That hasn't affected that choice. But if I have, you know, say two companies side by side, and I've gleaned information from what's been out on the news, for example, like Home Goods and Hobby Lobby standing next to each other, I would probably pick Home Goods over Hobby Lobby, just because of the owner of Hobby Lobby Green's, you know, notoriety has gotten in print. Because
you're more on the left.
Yeah, I probably.
And Hobby Lobby is more on the right.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Interesting. Yeah. Thank you, Rob, for that call. I want to go to Micki Maynard on this, because I have to think, you know, as Rob is explaining how he thinks about this and how he doesn't think about this, I have to think that a lot of people in this country and listening to the show are saying, well, I don't really care about a brand's politics. I just buy what I need.
No, I think people care. And the reason why people care is that it's been churned up. If you think about the world, say, 10 or 15 years ago, we didn't have the impact of the conservative media, right-wing media that we have now. I mean, we have a whole massive number of people that watch Fox News, that go on the websites from the right wing, that honestly don't listen to anything else or watch anything else. And so if you're in that silo and somebody takes off against a trans person, or somebody takes off against a gay person or a woman, there's a bunch of followers that will go with them. Now, I was actually very surprised at the impact on Bud Light, but Bud Light has a very specific market, and their very specific market was offended by using a trans person as a spokesperson. I would not think anything of it, but I'm not the Bud Light target customer.
And let me just take a quick side note break here to ask you, what is your beer of choice, Micki?
I am a zero alcohol drinker.
Okay, good for you.
Since 2019.
Good.
And I've tried Guinness, I've tried Sam Adams, I've tried the Labatt's from Canada, which is actually my favorite.
Okay. Nooshin Warren, do you have a favorite beer?
I do not judge me. I do not like beer.
Okay, I don't judge. This is a non-judgmental show. Tolliver, do you have a favorite beer?
Yeah, let's give a shout out to Surly Brewing Company in Minnesota. I love their IPAs. Super big fan of Surly.
I love an IPA. I love a good IPA. And before we go to break, I want to tell you that The Middle with Jeremy Hobson is also available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here with my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious Black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's Place, Black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place. A story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to The Middle, where we are bringing voices from the middle, geographically, politically, whatever the middle means to you. I'm a middle child, by the way. We're bringing them into the national conversation. I'm Jeremy Hobson. My guests are Nooshin Warren, professor of marketing at the University of Arizona and renowned expert on brand politics, and Micki Maynard, author and journalist who has covered business news for decades. She's in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We are asking you, how important is a company's politics to you? Do you care if the companies you buy from, the athletes you root for, or the musicians you listen to align with your political or social beliefs? Let's go actually to another caller here. Catherine is with us from Urbana, Illinois, my hometown. Catherine, welcome to The Middle. Kathy. Okay. We're on a first name basis now. So Kathy, tell us about your feeling about brands and politics.
Ever since I worked at Planned Parenthood, I've been very aware of certain companies that have either donated or given money to candidates that I did not like or care for because of their politics. And I boycott quite a few companies now.
You do? Like what?
Well, first of all, Domino's Pizza was one of the very first ones that I became aware of, that their money, that company was founded by a couple of young men who wanted to put their money to work against women's reproductive rights. So the profit from Domino's Pizza has funded Thomas More University in Michigan, and their primary job is to train attorneys to fight against women's rights. And that's when I very first became aware of money making a difference in what we hear, what we see, and in politics. And so I haven't had a Domino's Pizza in 20 years.
Wow. And you say that's when you first became aware. Did you then go looking into other companies' politics?
Not necessarily deliberately, but when at the primaries, two of the big telecommunications company were giving money to very right-wing candidates, and I didn't care for their stance on birth control, on women's rights, on LGBT issues, and so I switched to T-Mobile.
Interesting. Well, Kathy, thank you for your call. Nooshin Warren, what do you make of that?
I think that two things we've been talking about, both when it came to Hobby Lobby and now, when we ask people, would you go and actively find what firms are doing and then switch to a firm to shop from because of their policies, there is a we call it negativity bias. There is this difference that when a firm gets attention that they are doing activities that you do not like, it is more likely that you have an reaction towards it than going and actively looking for one that you do like. Mm-hmm. This becomes very important when these are consumer goods that are easy to switch. I applaud people who can change their cars or their mobile line, which is very difficult to do as big purchases or contracted purchases. But it's very easy for people to change their brand of shoes. It is easy for them to change packaged goods. So that I think that will happen more. And also I think that the effect of media and social media, the effect of polarization of news media, all of that now is a lot more than before. It's more likely to happen after we have social media, and it will make these effects even bigger.
You know, it's interesting, the calls that we've gotten so far have been, it sounds like mostly from people on the left who are angry at companies being more conservative, but that's not necessarily against the trend. Here's a survey from Bentley Gallup Force for Good. 5,700 interviews with U.S. adults in June of 2022 found that Democrats are more likely than Republicans and independents to feel businesses should publicly share their beliefs about social and cultural issues. 75% of Democrats say they should, compared with 40% of independents and 18% of Republicans. Nooshin Warren, does that line up with what you've found?
It does. And the reason is the definition of being on the liberal side. Liberal is usually changing. It reflects change. Conservative is generally being more conservative towards change. Therefore, the side that has to push for a change of a status quo happening should be louder.
Micki, do you think that brands can change people's minds about social and political issues with their advocacy?
Well, you might look at Nike as an example. You know, Colin Kaepernick was a very controversial figure when he took a knee. He was kind of hung out to dry by the NFL. No one would hire him. Nike made him a representative. And I think it probably changed. I mean, people at the time, there's a lot of rhetoric and discussion about the whole thing. But I think the fact that Nike brought him on board probably changed some attitudes towards Nike, because it was a situation of, who do you feel more strongly about, Nike or Colin Kaepernick? And if you were a fan of Nike, then them bringing in Colin Kaepernick was probably something that made you reconsider your feelings about him.
Yeah, Tolliver, you mentioned Nike. Did that whole thing with Colin Kaepernick affect your view of Nike even more? Were you already against Nike?
Yeah, I was sort of like staunchly against Nike. It sort of felt like something they just sort of threw out there as like a mea culpa almost for their past inaction, you know?
Nooshin Warren, I heard you nodding there audibly.
I think that, I actually was, what you heard was me thinking about Nike's Colin Kaepernick ad being the first step of my research towards this topic, because when that happened, this whole consumers debate and Nike shoes on fire on social media, I would see that so frequently that I thought about why firms do this, and when they do that, what happens in the long term. Nike actually, for a while, lost their sales, but in the long run got it back. And the reason is, if you are a runner and you are very comfortable running with Nike shoes, now a year has passed from that ad and you need new shoes, you probably will brush it off and go buy the shoes you were more comfortable with. A lot of times boycotts will die down. Not all the generations of boomers and X will stop buying Bud Light forever. They will miss it again because they've been having it. If you're 7 years old and we want to assume that you were a very good child, 50 years of Bud Light drinking is at least in your resume. And it's very difficult to boycott forever because anger does not last unless the issue becomes so close to your heart that is unforgivable to a point that your anger will not die down for that firm.
Micki, Maynard, a minute ago we were talking about Domino's. I know you have something to say about that. Domino's is based in Michigan, is it not?
It's based right here in Ann Arbor.
There you go.
And so Tom Monahan, who was the CEO, the owner, founder of Domino's Pizza, is a very conservative Catholic. We actually went to the same church for a little while, and then I think he thought it was not conservative enough, and he founded his own church, which is on the grounds of Domino's headquarters. He also wanted to start a college called Ave Maria College, and he needed a whole bunch of zoning changes in the Ann Arbor area, and people said no. And it really had nothing to do with the conservative philosophy, but he was really pushing the envelope in terms of what he wanted to develop. And he said, okay, I will take my college elsewhere. And he took it to Florida. Now, the interesting thing is, the church is still there. There's a convent, and there's actually Ave Maria Radio, which is the largest network of Catholic radio stations in the country. If you've ever been on a road trip and only could get AM radio, you might have heard some of Ave Maria's programming, or on FM. They're on FM too. But, there's a lot of people that were upset by that. But I think Domino's during the pandemic was available to a lot of people. And so if you needed a cheap pizza and you couldn't go out to eat, they would drop it off on your porch. So I kind of feel like maybe some of that has been forgotten, although certainly not for our caller.
Well, and you mentioned Florida, and Domino's went to Florida. We are definitely going to talk about Florida in our next segment, because that has been in the news a lot with the Disney Florida fight that has been going on between Governor Ron DeSantis, Republican, and of course Disney and Disney World. Let's get to another call that we have right now. We'll go to Daniel in Philadelphia. Daniel, welcome to The Middle.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you, and tell us how this topic hits you. How much do you care about a brand's politics or a company's politics?
I generally don't care much about it until I care about it, I guess. For example, I don't drink light beer. I don't buy light beer, but I can tell you that if I did, I'm not buying any Budweiser.
Why?
So I was almost I consider myself a little right of center kind of guy, progressive in many ways, maybe fiscally conservative. So I guess I fit the middle bio. But generally, I don't look for that. But it doesn't hurt as a tailwind or a positive. But I guess it can be a factor for me when it's overt and it's kind of in your face. So yes, I think it does. I don't consciously look for that, but I think advertising should be relatively neutral and focus on features, benefits, funny ways of marketing things. But today it's taken on a different level of energy, I guess is a good way to say it, I think.
So you were turned off of Bud Light because of Dylan Mulvaney.
I knew nothing about it until I heard about the controversy, and I thought it was hilarious. I was actually happy to hear it, and I was somewhat encouraged that consumers fought back and pushed back. And then as you analyze the whole thing, you realize what an incredible blunder on the part of a marketing team, a group of the top professionals on the planet selling beer, which is all about knowing your consumer, knowing how to position it for the consumer, and how they could just blunder so profoundly to have such horribly negative impact on the company and the brand. I'm shocked. I was just shocked by it. But I thought it was kind of funny, and I thought it was I was a little encouraged that the average consumer just didn't sit there and say, oh yeah, this is the new way they market things, and they really pushed back. So that's kind of how I took it.
Okay. Daniel, thank you for that call. Nooshin Warren, what do you make of what Daniel just said there?
I think that thinking about companies staying neutral and stick to more types of traditional advertising of their product, basically, would have been a great idea for some firms. We have firms that genuinely, just like we talked about Domino's, their CEOs stands for some value, and that kind of a leader will do what they think it's right, no matter what. So they're not thinking about profit or business at that point. They're thinking about the value. But a lot of firms, as we talked about, there are even political donations that they do 50-50 mostly to just have a secure position on both sides for regulations. These firms may like to stay neutral, but the society and the narrative in the media might not allow them anymore. The idea of silence is complicity has been brought up. An example of it is voter bill in Georgia a couple of years ago, where there were people that believed that if this bill goes into effect, a lot of people who will lose their voting right would be from more minority groups. And Coca-Cola did not say anything about this. Very quickly, this was brought up to attention from the media, because that company in Georgia, where this bill was being voted on, Coca-Cola had an amazing power there. And the idea was, if they don't say anything, this bill will go into effect. So Coca-Cola is taking a side. Therefore, it's very difficult to say, even as a firm that wants to stay neutral, if you stay neutral, the narrative is written by the media for you, and then defended or opposed by consumers for you. So strategically speaking, I don't think that large firms especially, are able to stay out of politics these days.
Yeah. Actually, that brings us to a very interesting point, because you had this fight in Florida, which was really pushed in the beginning between Disney and Ron DeSantis. They passed this law in Florida, the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, and initially Disney didn't say anything about it, and then they got a lot of pressure from people to start to act out against it, and then they came out and said, we're against this law, and that started this whole fight. Listen here to Ron DeSantis and what he had to say, getting very upset. He was speaking here during his presidential campaign kickoff about the feud with Disney. Listen.
And people told me, they said, listen, the media's coming after you, the left, but if Disney weighs in, they're the 800-pound gorilla, you better watch out, they're going to steamroll you. Well, here I stand. I'm not backing down 1 inch. We run the state of Florida.
Micki, Maynard, that fight started because Disney just basically couldn't stay neutral in that issue.
Well, Disney had a big financial situation too, because the whole Disney properties are essentially their own entity in Florida. And that was going to be taken away from them. And so there's some money definitely involved in this whole situation. It isn't just social, it's also look for the dollars. And I think that when Disney realized that they were no longer going to be able to call their own shots on their own properties in the middle of Florida, they thought, we have nothing to lose here. We're going to lose a great deal if we lose that. So let's take off the gloves.
Micki, Maynard, is there a brand that you can think of that is just beyond politics? I mean, I sort of think about McDonald's maybe, or like some of these big companies that you just don't think of them politically that much, even if they have a lot of impact when it comes to environment and stuff like that.
So I think I would disagree with you on McDonald's, because McDonald's has been a focus of the labor movement. The campaign called 5 for 15, 5 for 15, the whole push for $15 an hour minimum wage got started before the pandemic. I think this is fascinating because people were very critical of McDonald's before the pandemic because they weren't paying very well. And then here came the pandemic, and here came the shortage of workers. And all of a sudden you saw McDonald's across the country paying 15, 18 voluntarily, looking to hire people. And so I think that it let the air out of the balloon a little tiny bit when it came to McDonald's. Is there a company that's above everybody? I think there's a couple of examples. I mean, regionally, I think there are some companies like Stay Puft Marshmallows. I mean, the marshmallow fluff people in Massachusetts, Durkee's, I think it is. That's one of those companies that everybody's got Durkee's on their shelf. Here in the Midwest, let's see. I think in Chicago, it would be Old Style Beer, although, that's another one. You have
what
to
about
look
like what
across
about like a
regions.
department store? Do you think of like, Macy's or Saks Fifth Avenue, or, in the Midwest, Famous Bar, or Marshall Fields in the old days, were they beyond politics?
Marshall Field. Yeah. No, I mean, above politics, absolutely. I think the criticism has always been, are people getting paid enough? And I think that's one of the things with the whole union movement that's popping up right now, is it's causing a lot of people to think twice about some brands. For example, Starbucks. I think until the pandemic, Starbucks was cruising along. You didn't hear too much negativity about Starbucks, but then the pandemic came and the union organizing drive started, and now there's a whole feeling in the beverage world about Starbucks. And, are they going to have to let the baristas organize, because there's now so many places that are trying to organize?
There's an Axios Harris poll that came out that looked at, for Democrats, what were the most trusted brands, and for Republicans, what they were. And there are 5 companies that showed up in both lists, and they are Trader Joe's, H-E-B, which is a grocer, Patagonia, which is super interesting because they, have been pretty active on the left, Hershey, and Apple. Tolliver's favorite brand, Apple, loved by both Republicans and Democrats, apparently.
Yeah, I think there's also another element to this. Like, a lot of times I'll think like a brand is politically neutral, and then I'll find out that, the CEO of Wendy's is donating to a political cause suddenly. And I think there's like an element of you sort of, because you don't know, you kind of give up sometimes. You go, well, you know what, I'm just going to spend my money however I can, because I actually don't know what's going on behind the scenes with a lot of these companies, because I've never heard of open secrets, that kind of thing.
Coming up, more on brand politics, plus some tips on how to keep things civil when talking politics with your family over the holidays. Stay with us.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world. The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy. With very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. have both been assassinated. In Black America, was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago. This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious Black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's place, Black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform. The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place. A story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We are asking you today about your brand loyalty. Do your political and social beliefs play a role in your consumer choices? How about the sports teams you follow and the entertainers you enjoy? My guests are Nooshin Warren, a professor of marketing at the University of Arizona and renowned expert on brand politics, and Micki Maynard, author and columnist who's covered business news for decades. Nooshin Warren, what do you think? Is there a brand or a company that is beyond politics, that transcends politics? And if so, how do they do it?
Beyond politics is two meanings. Are they actually beyond politics and not contributing to different lobbies and different regulations? My answer is no, if they're large companies. Are they beyond politics in the eye of the consumers? That depends on where they are, what regulation it is, whether media notices it, whether there's one or two people working for that company that tweets something and then it goes viral. For large companies, this is always a possibility that somewhere somebody says something and then it's heard. In terms of political activities, I actually, while we were talking about McDonald's, I looked it up very quickly, which is another thing. We have information access. Open Secrets Federal Election Commission is open to everybody. They had 28 lobbying last year. Total lobbying expenditure of them for the second quarter of 2023 is $1,490,000. So can we say they are beyond politics? Not necessarily. Do they always voice their opinion loud for consumers? Maybe not.
Let's get to another call. This is Dana in Ardmore, Pennsylvania, who says that it is important to express your ideals in consumer choices. Hi, Dana.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I personally am interested in the values of a company, and it's important that companies that I support with my money match my values that align with equity and humanism and the environment and access to information and knowledge. So I wouldn't actually want to even work for a company that didn't believe in freedom of information and open dialogue and many other freedoms that we have. And I also wouldn't want to spend my money in companies. Like, for example, your last caller, you were just you were talking about Florida, for example. So I won't go to Florida. I won't spend any money. I won't vacation in Florida. I won't do business in Florida. I won't. Yeah. So it's super important to me. And even if my child looks at colleges, we were really considering, I mean, can this child who's a free thinker and not of the dominant nationality and identity go to places that are where they will be diminished? So, it makes us, all of our choices right now are centered around people's values because they determine our path and our future. Mm-hmm. These companies are more powerful than we are. So the only power we have, I believe, is voting with our dollars.
Have you always felt that way?
Absolutely no.
What changed?
When our governments, I guess, gave corporations more power than people, I think that changed. And I started looking at companies more seriously. And also, to look to the future. We can't have fast fashion if we want a future. We can't be just burning the environment if we want a future. We can't be dumping in the water if we want a future. So I have children. I want a future. I'm thinking 7 generations ahead. So I need to be discerning in my commitments financially and socially.
Well, Dana, thank you so much for that call. And I guess Nooshin Warren, that kind of lines up more with most of what we've been hearing today, which is people that really do feel like they want companies to reflect their moral values, their social values, their politics. They expect it of them, and they will reward those that do and punish those that don't.
Absolutely true. 2018, when companies like Pedro Novelli or Pew Center were surveying people, asking them whether you will shop from companies that match your value, they announced about 63% of consumers saying yes to that question. In 2020, that percentage is 82%. So when you talk to consumers, it seems that we are getting there. Some of it is because consumers, decision makers for dollars in any household are now millennial generations. You talk about Disney, aside from a lot of concerns that Disney had, one important one is decision maker for going to Disney are parents of children, which are now millennials. Those children are not raised and would be taken to Disney by Florida's more composition of population, which are grandparents. Mm-hmm. Therefore, Disney will think about that as well. And also, I don't think that was a bad political campaign for DeSantis as well,
right,
to be able to voice himself loud and clear.
That was Nooshin Warren, a professor of marketing at the University of Arizona, and Micki Maynard, a business journalist and author from Ann Arbor, Michigan. You're listening to The Middle. Well, since it's Thanksgiving, we're going to do something special as we close out the hour. We're going to give you some advice on how to handle your family members if you've been talking politics with them or plan to this weekend. Catherine Richert is a correspondent for Minnesota Public Radio based in Rochester, Minnesota, and she's working on an app that's expected this holiday season that is meant to help people preserve relationships in spite of their differences. It's called Talking Sense, and Catherine Richert joins me now. Hi, Catherine. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Jeremy. Happy to be here.
Well, what will this app, Talking Sense, exactly do?
Okay, so I think the thing to know about Talking Sense is that it kind of pulls together a lot of things that I've seen as a journalist in my almost 20-year career into one place, right? We have a ton of great reporting, especially around disinformation and fact-checking. We have all of that, and that's been going on for a while. And I think in the last few years, certainly during the pandemic, we've seen more great resources around how to have difficult conversations with people that you don't see eye to eye on when it comes to what you're reading about in the news. So the app kind of pulls these two things together, and it really is going to help people practice and think about hard conversations in advance, the ones that can kind of upend Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas dinner or whatever holiday you celebrate, or maybe just a challenging conversation you're having with your spouse or your best friend around what's going on in the news. So the app will provide tips and prompts on how to enter these conversations, how to keep them going, how to exit them gracefully, and then also allow people to access, solid quality journalism if they're interested in knowing more about some of the extremely contentious topics that surely will come up over the holidays, but also going into the 2024 election year.
Okay, a lot there, but let me ask you about a few things. One is you talk about this is something that people can look at in advance of a difficult conversation. What about when they're right in the middle of it? Would they pull up their phone and look at this app?
To give you a little more detail about what it will look like, think of it as kind of a flip card game, right? So it's going to kind of coach people on what type of person are you talking to? How does that person approach a conversation? Are they coming in trying to make you feel bad about your opinions? How do you approach a conversation? What sort of role do you play? And it's going to give you tips on, okay, well, if you're talking to someone who really, really wants to change your mind, here's how you might respond to them saying, well, you're wrong, right? And you will be able to sort of click on these flip cards that will give you some ideas on how you might respond to that without blowing up that conversation. And really, the goal of the app is not so much to convince people that you're right. It's not meant to win an argument. It's really meant to lay the groundwork for future conversations and develop a deeper understanding of where our neighbors and our friends and our family members are coming from on certain political topics that, you don't agree on.
There's an old book that has been read like zillions of times called How to Win Friends and Influence People. I wonder if you've looked at that as you've worked on this, because it's the same kind of ideas, right? But it's sort of like, how do you tell somebody something when you disagree with them without making them feel bad about it?
Over the course of my reporting career, which has started in Washington, D.C., covering Congress, had a brief stint at a website called PolitiFact where they rated political claims. I did something really similar for NPR. I think, in my career, just thought, well, if we give people better information, they'll all get on the same page, right? And I just don't think that has happened in the way that, as journalists, we assume that it will. What I have seen, and especially as NPR's lead COVID reporter for, 2.5 years and occasionally from time to time still take on that role, is that people have really stopped listening to each other. They have stopped really trying to better understand where someone's coming from. And I think that this really hit home for me as a reporter during the pandemic when I was talking to people who maybe saw things really differently.
Well, you bring up people, actually listening to each other. That is exactly what we're trying to do with this show. The Middle is to say, let's have a civil conversation. People can disagree. You can come in with different views. Everybody's welcome. Let's stick to the facts. So you've brought up facts a lot. How much does that have to do with the problem of people not being able to have a civil conversation, even with their own family members, is, people aren't sticking to things that are actually true. They're getting their information from places that are not trustworthy.
Right. I think we do not have a common set of facts anymore. It feels really cynical to say that as a reporter, as someone who really tries very hard in her reporting to produce a story that is factual, right? But I think what we're asking our audience to do in this upcoming election cycle is to set that aside for a little bit, right? We might be operating from a different set of facts as someone that we love and care about. And I think the real impact that disinformation has had and political division has had is upending those relationships, severing those ties, right? If we want to defeat the impact of what this is doing to our society, maybe we just say, okay, look, let's set aside the fact that we don't have a common set of facts. Just tell me more about where you're reading this information. Show me where you're getting it. How did you come to believe that? These questions that are genuinely curious and also, again, just help people really figure out where's Dad coming from on this, because I just don't get it. And I hope that means that they have just a deeper relationship overall.
And how much do you think that is social media? And not even just social media, but email chains with 1,000 forwards on it that just have complete nonsense in them, and the people send them around to their friends and they're trusted as if they're facts.
I think so much of it has to do with social media. And part of Talking Sense, too, will really, provide people some tools on how to identify, for instance, AI-generated content that, 4 years ago was not really as much of a thing as it is today. So a ton of it is social media. I think the other thing I see a lot on social media as well is this idea that if someone does not agree with you, cut them out of your life. You don't have time for this. You don't need to listen to them. And I think both of those two things together, sort of this swirl of, seeing only what you want to see, especially on social media, especially in these bite-sized, snippets that often don't tell the whole story, combined with this empowerment of just sort of being like, you know what, we're done, really is a potent combination of factors coming together at the same time.
So let's come back to the sort of dinner table with the family. I feel like when I was growing up in the Midwest, we didn't talk politics at the Thanksgiving table. We probably were more likely to talk about what games we were going to play or what movie we were going to watch after dinner. Is that a new thing that people are just talking about these serious issues with their family members that have completely different beliefs?
I will say in my personal life, I have seen it more often. I can't speak for everyone, but I can think of a Thanksgiving dinner a few years ago where things felt like they were getting heated and then they went well. And actually it helped me and my husband have a better sense of where my dad and stepmother were coming from on some certain topics. And I think that I look back on that and I think, man, I wish I could bottle that up sometimes and access it whenever I want to. I think though that what I've seen work successfully is we need to let go of any expectations that we are going to win an argument over, 20 minutes to 30 minutes while we're eating dinner. Maybe everyone's had a little bit to drink, right? Just that's not going to happen. Let go of that. The second thing is I think people need to come into these conversations genuinely curious rather than just interested in telling everyone what they read on, this website or telling everyone that they know they're right because X, Y, and Z. I think that there's a lot of that need to win that comes into these conversations that you need to set aside for these things to go better. I also think it's okay to say, hey, look, maybe this isn't the best time to talk about it, but I would love to come back to this with you at a different time. That's okay to say too.
What are some of the topics that you find are the easiest for people on opposite ends of the political divide to talk about, to find some sort of common ground or at least have a pleasant conversation?
Well, I think that when it comes to our hopes and dreams for the community that we want to live in, I bet there is a lot of common ground if you take the time to figure it out. The getting there might look really different, right? I mean, I think we all want safe communities. I think we all want communities where people can thrive and have good lives, right? I think it's in the details in terms of how you get there and what that maybe looks like.
What made you want to spend so much time in the last couple of years on this particular thing? You saw a problem, you wanted to find a solution for it. Why was this one the one that you wanted to spend that time on?
I think it was the culmination of a few things. So first of all, I go back to my stint doing political fact checking, both for PolitiFact and then for NPR for 5 years, right? I'd pick these claims, I'd take them apart, I'd rate them true, false, misleading, whatever it was. And I think what I saw were people using those ratings to show that they were the smartest person in the room. And I think that reporting is important, and I still believe in it. I think as journalists, we are morally obligated to tell people what is right and what is wrong, what is supported by facts and what isn't. I think the thing that we didn't do well, both in that practice and then during COVID too, was giving people the tools to actually talk about this stuff in meaningful ways, to have civil discourse around it. I think the COVID experience as well, for reporting for me, was really kind of the thing that pushed me over the edge into wanting to do this. I feel like for every person I talked to who lost someone that they loved to COVID, like the virus, I talked to that many more people who had lost an important relationship, right? They couldn't talk to grandma or their sibling or their best friend anymore because they simply did not see this pandemic the same way. And I thought, man, what if we could just give people better tools to talk about this stuff?
So when can people actually use this app? I know you have a soft launch targeted for the holiday season.
Yes. So I am not a software developer, but other people that I work with are. And we are sort of in phase 2 of developing the app. We created a prototype. We did some user testing, got some excellent feedback, and we are refining it right now. And we hope to have it soft launch around the holidays. And then in early 2024, as we're ramping up into this pivotal election year, we're going to be doing a hard launch. And we're also going to be doing 2 other things that I'm really excited about. The first is that we're going to take this whole concept on the road around Minnesota. We're working with with a nonprofit called Braver Angels.
Right.
It was founded by marriage and family therapists at the University of Minnesota back in 2016, really in the weeks after that election. And their whole mandate is to go around the country and host these workshops that help communities bridge their political divides. And then we're also just going to use this as a reporting tool. What do people want to know about? What are they confused about? And really gain feedback from our audience on what it is that we should be doing more reporting on.
That is Catherine Richert, a correspondent for Minnesota Public Radio and creator of Talking Sense. Catherine, thank you so much, and good luck with your family this weekend.
Thank you. You too, Jeremy.
Well, next week we have a great show for you. We're going to be talking about mental health challenges and solutions across the country with Mayor Hillary Sheevey of Reno, Nevada. She's president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and Jason Kander in Kansas City, Missouri, who ran for mayor there but dropped out of the race, citing mental health and PTSD after his tours of Afghanistan. So we'll be taking your calls. The question, how do you tend to your mental health, and do you have access to care in your community? You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE, leave us a voicemail, or call in live next week, or go to listentothemiddle.com and drop us a line there. You can also sign up for our weekly newsletter there. Every week we've got stories from the middle, our call of the week, a lot more. Listentothemiddle.com for the newsletter. And don't forget, The Middle with Jeremy Hobson is also available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, produced by Joanne Jennings, John Barth, Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, and Charlie Little. Our technical director is Jason Croft. Our theme music was composed by Andrew Hay. Thanks to Nashville Public Radio, iHeartMedia, and the more than 370 public radio stations that are making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Happy Thanksgiving. Talk to you next week.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
When segregation was a law, one mysterious Black club owner, Charlie Fitzgerald, had his own rules.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
It was like stepping on another world.
Was he a businessman, a criminal, a hero?
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
Charlie's Place, from Atlas Obscura and Visit Myrtle Beach. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Saturday, May 2nd, country's biggest stars will be in Austin, Texas at our 2026 iHeart Country Festival presented by Capital One. Tickets are on sale now. Get yours before they sell out at Ticketmaster.com. That's Ticketmaster.com.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.